recently completed my first official half marathon. A lot of you guys followed along with me on the journey through my Instagram page where I was posting some updates, not super consistent. It was my first one. So I kind of just wanted to do it, see how it went, and I want to talk about it in this episode today. So I started running back in September, is when I really got into it. And keep in mind, I have a background in swimming. They have some similarities, but my body is pretty much completely adapted for the pool, meaning that running really takes a toll on me. I don't have a huge base on land. So things like impact from constant steps, firm surfaces, concrete, they really took a toll on my legs and the tissues and muscles and tendons within my legs. So when I first started, I knew that I was going to have to be cautious. So I started with 1 day a week for the first couple of weeks. I was like 2, 3 miles, nothing crazy, just a light jog, not even worrying about time or pace. And slowly from there, I built up to 2 days a week, three, 3.5 ish miles, never really going past that for the first couple months. And I knew I had to be cautious because I needed to adapt to the demands of running, something that I just don't or didn't have. But I didn't realize how cautious I was actually going to need to be because come November time, only 2 months in, I was having some serious shin pain. And this is when I knew that I was going to have to outsource from some professionals or people who had a lot of experience in this actual field. So, fortunate enough for me, my sister in law, shout out Sierra, her dad has spent a lifetime in the field of running and triathlon and actually runs his own triathlon team. Shout out Team Sheeper, absolute legend. Tim, you're the man. I appreciate all your help, and we'll talk more about that. But he looked at me. I explained my situation. I told him about my shins and how cautious I had been. And he said, "Look, Cal, I'm going to tell you something right now. Your years of swimming, I've seen this time and time again. You have the cardiovascular system of a Ferrari, but you have the leg tissue and the running ability of a Honda Civic, a 90s Honda Civic. You are not built for this. So when you're out there, it's going to feel easy, but your body is not prepped for this. So you're going to need to be even more cautious. That concrete, the roads you're running on is too much impact." So he recommended I take it to a treadmill, grass, turf, for the next several months. And that's exactly what I did. I've tried to do things before on my own and failed. And I'm a huge believer of outsourcing to people who have expertise in specific fields. And so I knew I had to put my money where my mouth was and really listen to this guy who has decades and decades of experience. So although not fun, not very fun, I should say, for the next 4 months, I strictly ran on the treadmill and occasional jogs on turf. A lot of plyometrics and jumping and just light impact work on turf in the gym that my brother and I run, and also on grass fields that I was able to find. So soon after I started running on the treadmill, my pain immediately decreased. Treadmill surface, especially a nicer treadmill, is way more resilient, meaning that it has shock absorbers inside them that absorb most of the shock from the ground that would typically shoot through your leg, and would affect your ankle, knee, and hip joints all the way up the chain. So, I mean, literally within a couple of weeks, I had no shin pain, and I was like, "Wow, this guy's a magician. I'm ready to get back onto the roads." But I didn't. I stuck with it, and I didn't hit my first outside run. Actually, I did one in December, which we'll talk about, but I didn't really start getting into it until end of January. So I'm running 2, 3 days a week on the treadmill. I'm building up. At this point, I had hit a couple 5 or 6 mile runs, no pain. Definitely could feel that I was getting more comfortable jogging and running and being on the treadmill. In December, I decided to just basically raw dog a half marathon. That's as best as I can put it. On Christmas Eve, the morning of, I was leaving for Hawaii the next day. I knew I probably wasn't going to be running much, and I just got this idea in my head. I was like, I want to do a half marathon. So I went out on this really nice trail that we have that runs through the East Bay, and I ran 6.5 miles down, 6.5 miles back, 13.1 total. And I'm not going to lie, it hurt. It hurt really bad. The first 8 miles were totally chill, but I mean, I fell off a cliff. And by the end of it, the last 2, 3 miles, I could barely pick my legs up off the ground. I ended up somehow going like a 148 or a 149, I think, on my watch, which is about an 820, 830 pace. But I mean, it was a serious drop off, but I was happy to finish it. I'd never ran that many consecutive miles before. So that kind of gave me like a zone. And I was like, all right, like here's where I'm at. I'm not even anywhere near where I thought I was at. I need to start, like seriously looking at like what kind of workouts I'm doing, um, putting a little bit more versatility into my training. Started thinking about things like incline, started thinking about things like doing some stuff through the hills, actual pace workouts, tempo runs, things like that. And it really allowed for me to put my coaching and science brain to the test. Thought about, like trying to find plans online, which are super easily accessible, but I wanted to see like if I could come up with my own training plan that would allow for me to ultimately reach my goal, which I will tell you, for my first official half marathon. So mid-January, I signed up for my first official half marathon, which was April, I don't even know, end of April, I guess. I can't even remember the date, but it was in Santa Cruz, California. And, 4 months out, I was like, this is, I think, the perfect next step. This will give me more time to up my volume, continue to adapt, and get more comfortable with just the running world. So my goal when I signed up, I immediately off the bat wasn't thinking very time oriented. I knew that I could probably go faster than a 148 with 4 months of training, but I figured a better goal would be to finish the race stronger and to be more comfortable, not feel like I was going to die and not be able to not walk the next day. So at this time in January, I was doing about 3 runs a week, maybe an occasional fourth, still mostly on the treadmill. I would do, one day a longer jog, typically 6, 7 miles, another day at incline. So 2 to 3 incline set on the treadmill. Not a ton of miles, usually 3 to 4. And then another day I was doing more pace work. So I would go several rounds, typically 4 to 6 rounds of a half mile at what I would call my race pace. So under 8 minutes, usually around 7:30, something like that. And then a half mile, bringing it back easy. So kind of working on some heart rate fluctuation, getting into some pacing work, but also going in and out of those zones. So that was kind of my set, those 3 sets for several weeks until I did start to implement some outside days in mid-February. Mid-February, end of February, I was running 1 or so days outside, having no pain. It was absolutely incredible. And that's when I really started to actually appreciate running, just because I had just been literally fighting mental battles on the treadmill. I mean, if you have ever ran on a treadmill for multiple days or consistently, I mean, it is not fun. It is, you've got nothing to look at. You're just in the same place, literally a hamster wheel. So it really makes you appreciate running when you get to go outside and be in nature and have things to look at and enjoy the fresh air. So no pain from that. That was great. That was a great first step. And I actually turned those 1 day a week running to, I started running that outside day on the weekends with a buddy, either my girlfriend, my buddy Jackson. We would do a little bit of a longer run. This is where I started pushing some 8-10 milers, which was great. Again, I could feel myself getting more comfortable running. No problems cardiovascularly, but most importantly, no problems like in my lower extremities, no shin pain, nothing like that, just basic muscular fatigue. So around this time, like mid-March, end of March is when I really started. I was like, okay, if I'm going to up my training volume, now's the time, because I'm feeling good and I'm just overall getting excited for the first official half marathon. So started doing 4 days, basically exactly the types of workouts that I just explained. One was just a normal, this would typically be a Monday. It would be just a longer run on the treadmill, do what I could handle, 5, 6, 7 miles. Next day I would typically do on like a Tuesday, I would do my incline training. And eventually I did kind of start doing this actually in hills, like on like hiking settings. There's some really nice hills in the East Bay area that have a little bit of incline. They go up and down. And I found that to be super useful, totally different type of training. And that is where I seriously think I made some huge progress in terms of like my conditioning. It is so much harder to run up a hill than it is to just run on flat surface. So those would typically be 2 to 3 miles, nothing crazy. I continue to keep that pacing work that I mentioned earlier, the half mile on pace, half mile off. Those ones were tough. It started to make me think of swimming. Like I was just doing sets, that half mile on, half mile easy, and it was just repetitive. It was difficult, but I knew that like it was really important to raise my heart rate and then bring it back down and raise it again and get better at actually, hitting the pace that I thought I could potentially do. And then, that fourth day was just longer runs on the weekend, trying to hit some extra miles. And at this time, probably March, I was doing 20 plus mile weeks, which was great. And then came April and I really started to make a push. I added a 5th day. I was doing 2-3 days outside in April, which was great. On paved trails by my apartment, and I was just kind of starting to turn it on a little bit, getting comfortable, feeling good, feeling healthy. Most importantly, there wasn't really any new types of workouts that I added. I was paying attention more to a little bit of like my pace work, doing some descending runs. One of my best workouts actually happened like a week before the half marathon. I did 9 miles and I perfectly descended each one. I think one of them, like mile 7, might have been like a couple seconds slower than mile 6, but I started at like an 8:40 and dropped all the way down to a 6:30 throughout 9 miles. And I was like, okay, this is how I know I'm in good shape, but I'm comfortable out here. I wasn't having like the muscular fatigue that I had back in December. And around this time, I knew that I needed to come up with more of a set plan for the actual half marathon. Like, how am I going to attack this? So I wanted to talk to someone with experience. So I reached out to my sister-in-law's dad again, actually had a conversation with him on the phone, which was huge. And we basically came up with a plan that worrying about time for this first official half marathon wasn't the best idea. He goes, we know you're a great athlete, Cal. You're a competitor. Could you go out there and just, muscle out a 130 something? Yeah, you totally could. But I want you to make a plan and I want you to stick to it. I want you to get some more experience, and then we can use this first one as a marker for future half marathons or run races down the road. So we came up with a plan that I would keep it a very comfortable first 6.5 miles. So first half of the race, keep it at an almost awkwardly easy pace. He said that if I came in somewhere around 50, 51, 52 minutes for my first 6.5 miles, and then, that back half, if I was feeling good, I could kind of set it free a little bit and see where it would go from there. He also helped me with a nutrition plan for the actual race itself, which was just one GU, or my normal breakfast, and then one GU 20 minutes before the race, and then one more at 5 or 6 miles, and then one more at 10 or 11 miles. And yeah, so that my last week, or 2 weeks before the race, I actually did a 40+ mile week, which was the highest I ever got in my training. I think it ended up being like 42-ish miles in total of a week of volume. And then I did a taper week. I ran 4 times, and it was nothing more than 2.5, 3 miles. Ran the day before the race, and it was 1 mile. But yeah, as most of you guys know, because I posted the results, I ended up having a pretty great first official half marathon, and ended up going a 1:34:58, I think, which turned out to be like a 7:14, 7:15 mile pace, which is way faster than I was expecting. I'd be totally lying if I said that I didn't kind of intrinsically believe that I could go faster than a 140 at this point. I thought, just my training and how I felt, I was like, yeah, I definitely think that's in the cards. I'm not going to stress about it. But I did feel like that was a possibility, and it definitely was. So I also perfectly executed my plan. I went out about 50 minutes and 18 seconds, I think, which means I came back in a 44-ish, which is pretty awesome. Last mile, mile and a half, 2 miles was definitely harder, but I felt strong. And my last mile was actually in the 5 minutes. I pretty much almost completely perfectly descended the entire thing. But yeah, I'm pretty sure my last mile was like a 5:50. It was great. I was in great shape. I had fun picking people off at the end, just chasing them down. And overall, it was just an awesome experience. Yeah, so now that I have that marker, I'm definitely looking forward to my next one. My plan as of now, I think I've decided, is to do another half marathon next, maybe sometime September, October. Summer's going to be really busy, but I think I could make that work. And, that 1:34 is a great time. I was definitely still conservative. I don't think it would be unreasonable for me to set a goal of trying to break 1:30 for my next one, now that I know how it feels, what I need to do, how I can prepare better. But overall, I can definitely see why these are addicting, why people get addicted to triathlons, marathons, things like that, because it was a lot of fun and it was something new and refreshing compared to the years I spent swimming. And yeah, I had a blast. I hope that if you're considering, doing a half marathon, you will take a calculated and cautious approach. I hope that this video helps you. If you have any questions at all about any of my training or anything that I just talked about, please feel free to message me, reach out. I'm an open book. I want to help. I'm not a professional at all. I've only done 2 half marathons, 1 official. But I definitely learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to continue to learning. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Lesson learned.